Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all here. Good morning, Sonia. Good morning, everybody on that's joining through YouTube.
Good morning.
Thank you. It's great to see you all here on this fine Sunday, and I will start our talk today with a text from the book Our Daily Bread. Just share my screen so you guys can see it. So the text that we chose, it's called The Battle Within, and it's chapter 178 from the book Our Daily Bread. In Portuguese, it's called Pão Nosso, by Chico Xavier through the Spirit Emmanuel. And the reflection that he brings is a passage from Paul, when Paul wrote to the Philippians in chapter 1, verse 30, when Paul said, "Since you're going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now hear that I still have." In his youth, Paul did bear arms against common circumstances in order to consolidate his position and assert himself in the future of the race. He fought to surpass the intelligence of the youth of his time, distancing himself from many colleagues and companions. He argued in court with doctors of law and was victorious. He tried and succeeded in obtaining a most enviable material situation. He fought to prove himself in the highest court of Jerusalem and overcame elderly instructors of the chosen people. He resolved to pursue those who he felt were enemies of the established order and multiplied his adversaries everywhere. He wounded, tormented, and complicated the life of some of his respectable friends, sentenced innocent people to nameless worries, and fought against sinners and saints, the just and the unjust. However, a moment surged in which the Lord beckoned his spirit to another type of battle, the battle within. When that time arrived, Paul of Tarsus became quiet and listened. The sword broke in his hands forever. He no longer has arms to harass, but only to be helpful and to serve. He travels in a modified manner, inversely. Instead of humiliating others, he bows his own neck. He goes through suffering and perfects himself through silence, with the same disposition for work that characterized him in his era of blindness. He's stoned, incarcerated, beaten, often misunderstood. However, he proceeds steadfast to the encounter of the divine renovation. If you still have not battled with your inner self, the day will come when you will be called upon to similar service. Pray and be vigilant. Prepare yourself and adapt your heart to humility and patience. Remember, my brother, that not even Paul, who was graced by the personal visit of Jesus, was able to escape. So let us close our eyes in this moment and embark on a quick prayer, inviting our friend Paul of Tarsus, our Master Jesus, who came to Paul and helped enlighten him, helped Paul see the right way. And Paul accepted that invitation. So we ask Jesus that you help us today, this morning, to reflect upon serenity, to reflect upon patience, to reflect upon peace, these virtues that you so beautifully showed us and that Paul worked on and also exemplified to us. We ask you, Jesus, that you give us the strength, that you give us the hope, that we too can become serene, peaceful, and patient beings. Help, Jesus, with our daily struggles. When we realize we lack some patience, we lack some serenity. And help us be motivated to keep working, to keep progressing, so we can soon feel you closer to us, and we can soon walk the same footsteps that you did today, tomorrow, forever and ever. So be it. Thank you all for joining us again. And I'm really excited today, actually. I've been reflecting about serenity, about patience for quite a while in the past couple of months. And yesterday I stumbled upon a book called Calm by Francisco Cândido Xavier, Through the Spirit Emmanuel. And this book has a lot of interesting and powerful reflections. It's a very short book. It's got 33 or so chapters, small texts, and I read a few of them, and our good friend, even though we don't know him, our good friend Arturo Valadares, he's actually done reflections upon each chapter of this book. So he's got 33 or so videos on his channel on YouTube where he goes through each chapter and reflects upon the teachings that Emmanuel is bringing to us here. And I read a few texts and it really touched me. So today we'll be going through one text line by line and reflecting upon it. So it's a bit of a different type of presentation as I usually do. But it was a really good text, and it's a really good book. And when we talk about calm, when we talk about serenity, when we talk about patience, about peace, I think it's something that I've been searching for, but I believe a lot of us have as well, especially in the times that we are right now. And so the more we choose, the more we build that calmness, that serenity, that peace within us, the more the world becomes peaceful and in harmony. So again, it's based on the book Calm by Chico Xavier. And I took Arturo Valadares' exposition that he did on this book, and I liked 3 chapters of this book, chapter 5, 8, and 11. And I had planned yesterday to do this talk on chapter 5 and 8 called Serenity and Patience and Peace in Us. But when I did a dry run this morning, I realized that I've exhausted my 1 hour with only chapter 5. So today we're only focusing on one chapter so we can reflect about each paragraph, and then I'll do chapter 8 and then chapter 11 and maybe more chapters in more talks to come, because it's truly a book that I quite enjoyed. So hopefully you can extract and reflect and feel the same callings, the same reflections that I felt. And so chapter 5 is entitled Serenity and Patience. And it's interesting to reflect upon why patience, why serenity? And starting this talk, these reflections, we can see that in Luke chapter 28, or 21, sorry, Jesus told us that by your patient endurance, you will gain your souls. So gaining your souls, there are many interpretations. The ones that I like are gaining your soul is being self-aware of who we are, understanding our feelings, understanding our emotions, being able to control ourselves, be able to love ourselves, and so many other interpretations. Basically, what we are trying to achieve as we go through our lives. And Jesus is telling us here that by your patient endurance, you will gain your souls. So he's giving us a hint of how important patience is. And not only patience today, but he's talking about the endurance of patience, meaning patience today, tomorrow, the day after, and so on and so forth, until we can get this constant feeling of patience within us, where we will be able to fully gain our souls, to fully be aware, to fully love and ourselves, and not only ourselves, but patience certainly help us love others, as most of you would have already experienced it. And the other one that Emmanuel brings, he talks about patience in many books, and in a few of them, he actually gives an interesting reflection about the word patience. And this is just an interpretation. This is not the explanation of what the word means. But when you look at the word patience, in Portuguese, this works a little bit better. But you can think of patience as being the science of peace. First part of the word means peace, and then the second, science, would be science. So the science of peace. So if we're looking for peace, why not work on our patience? And serenity is the other one that goes hand in hand with patience, because serenity means to be able to discipline our emotions, our feelings, and try to transform that pressure cook that we are sometimes, that our feelings are sometimes, where we're constantly boiling and bursting out and lashing out at people. And learn how to wait, learn how to control ourselves, especially in times like this, especially in a pandemic where we have no real immediate control, being able to learn how to wait for it, especially Christmas 2021 and New Year's 2022. I believe a lot of us thought this would be over by now, but it's not. And here is a great opportunity. It's a great lesson to teach us serenity, to teach us patience. So may Jesus help us utilize this that we're going through now to exercise, to practice, to build our serenity, to build our patience. So let us then embark on this text. There's 14 paragraphs, so 14 slides, where we'll go through each one of them and give some reflections. And I invite you all to participate with questions, with comments, how you guys interpret a paragraph. Either you can post it on YouTube or on Zoom, so we can learn from each other. So the first paragraph of this text, Emmanuel tells us, and he starts off really well and really to the point. He says that in order to preserve our own peace, it is essential that we are willing to keep careful attention to ourselves. I'm going to read this again. In order to preserve our own peace, it is essential that we are willing to keep careful attention to ourselves. So keeping careful attention to ourselves is how we will preserve our peace. So how can we pay careful attention to ourselves? Well, through prayer, through meditation, through reflection, through studying, through applying those studies, especially studies around the gospel, apply those studies within our lives. That way, I'll learn about myself. I'll be more self-aware. I'll be able to detect how I'm feeling, how I'm acting, how I'm reacting. And in doing so, I'll be able to control myself better, be better and better with knowing us. And in doing so, as Emmanuel tells us, we can preserve our own peace. When we're more self-aware, when we can control more our feelings and our actions, we are no longer subject as much to our passions, to the things that the world tempt us with. Arturo Valladares, he brings a reflection that passions, they take control over us when we're being passive about our actions, when we're being passive about our feelings, our emotions, when we're letting our emotions, our ego control us. That's when we give in to passion. That's when we give in to the temptations of the world that do not have our best interest in mind. So as we start to, like Emmanuel is telling us here, as we start to pay careful attention to us, how we are reacting, how we are acting, how we are feeling, and how our emotions are going, this can help us be more peaceful within ourselves. Our dear Juliana, thank you, Ju. She posted a passage here from Chico. She says that when somebody provoke irritations on us, take a glass of water, drink, and conserve a little bit in the mouth. Don't put it out. Don't swallow it. And while it lasts, the temptation to respond, to react to that person, let the water bathe your tongue. That's the water of peace. Thank you, Ju. That was beautiful. And truly it is. This is from the movie Nosso Lar. I'll have to remember the translation. And it truly is this reflection of before reacting is reflecting, thinking, paying careful attention to how we are. So instead of reacting, we start acting with consciousness. We start acting with love. We start acting with peace. And and then let's move on to the next paragraph. As you're aware, we're going through a lot of paragraphs today. There's 14 of them. And the second one, Emmanuel brings to us that the conflict of invaluable outcomes can arise from an outburst of uncontrolled feelings. However, peace is not achieved without effort. So let's reflect upon what he's trying to tell us here. He says that the conflict of invaluable outcomes can arise from an outburst of uncontrolled feelings. So the conflict that we feel, whenever we feel the impulse, whenever we react to things, that generates a conflict within us. Whenever we have an uncontrolled outburst, like he's telling us, that generates conflict within us, because that's not a peaceful feeling to have. I'm not acting, instead of I'm reacting. So here Emmanuel is telling us, however, peace is not achieved without effort. So for us to be able to control those outbursts, so no longer outburst, it requires effort. It requires work for us to build that serenity, for us to build that patience. And we will go through many things in life to invite us to build that. When Emmanuel tells us that peace is not achieved without effort, that effort, we get invitations almost daily to build that patience, to build that serenity. And if they come more than once a day, that's another indication that that's something that we truly are being invited to work on, because there's a lot for us to learn. And Artur brings the reflection that if you look at Jesus, for example, he's a spirit, he's a pure spirit that is peaceful, right? His patience, his serenity is completely built. So he doesn't have to work on it daily because he's already done all that work. But us here on earth as imperfect spirits, we still have to work on it. We're still are invited to work on it daily. It's not something that will happen overnight, but it is something that will require this effort daily. And God's mercy brings us to that reflection almost every single day, if not multiple times a day, to exert, to practice that patience. And there's a reason for that, right? And then the third paragraph, Emmanuel says that anyone who believes in the imaginary value of unreasonable disinhibition in order to ensure proper balance, observe the disoriented electricity and the undisciplined traffic. So lots of words here. Let's depict a little bit of this paragraph. A lot of us, or some of us, might see or might think that this unreasonable disinhibition is something of value. So this is what Emmanuel's telling us here. Anyone who thinks that disinhibition, meaning not caring about what we say, just saying everything that comes to mind, not reflecting, just saying what comes to mind, which means this disinhibition, just saying whatever comes. A lot of us might think that's of value, might think that's something that we should achieve. But he's telling us that that's not the case. He's saying that when we are disinhibited, when we say everything and anything we want and anything that comes to mind, he compares that to disoriented electricity. For example, having a bunch of cables intermingled, and that can cause a short and burn things. Or the same thing as undisciplined traffic. Can you imagine if every car wanted to turn at whenever it pleased them, or stop and go whenever it pleased them? That would cause chaos. So this disinhibition that many of us think is something that we should aim for, Emmanuel is inviting us to reflect upon it and say, do we really need to say everything that comes to mind? Maybe we should reflect upon what comes to mind first, so we can understand, so we can apply some discipline, some discernment to what comes, and find a balance. This minute of reflection is what actually Juliana brought us, is that minute between receiving something and acting upon it. There's a time in between there. That is the patience. That's the serenity that we're working on, so we can reflect, and instead of reacting, we can act wisely. And let's keep going. He says, nobody has a serenity they haven't built. Hence, it is imperative, the surveillance on ourselves. So this is something that we build. You can think of it as a building. The building is composed of many floors, something that doesn't happen overnight. And he uses that word. Emmanuel says that nobody has serenity they haven't built. So when we look at somebody And we think of them, oh, they're so serene. They were just born that way. Well, they weren't born that way. They built that serenity. It's been in the works for quite a while. If it wasn't in this lifetime, it was in previous lifetimes that they did do the work to build it. And as an example, we can think of Paul of Tarsus. That's why we read a text about him in the very beginning. Paul of Tarsus, in the beginning of his, in the book, Paul and Stephen, in the beginning, before he met Stephen, before he met Christ, he was somebody who was very impatient. He was somebody who was very explosive, very impulsive throughout that time of his life. And it wasn't until he met Christ, he had that encounter with Christ, that he started to build his serenity. So he didn't have serenity, he didn't have patience. But after meeting Christ, he started to develop that. He started to work on that. And for those of you who read the book, Paul and Stephen, you'll know that after Paul met Christ, after he started working on himself, he went back to the church where Stephen was. And there he met Peter and James. James in Portuguese is Tiago. And there's a part of the book when Paul and James, they're arguing about circumcision. And Paul is bringing back that explosiveness, that impulsiveness that he used to have. So that kind of shows us that even though Paul had started working on himself, those were still there. He still hadn't completely overcome the impulsiveness, the explosiveness, the wanting to be right, just by the way he was arguing with James. And it was Peter who told him to calm down and did some reflections with Paul to help him calm down. And then Paul went on to work on himself even more and to build some patience, to build some serenity, and to show us that he was able to achieve that. Towards the end of the book, before Paul went to Rome, Paul had a dream to go to Rome to bring the gospel to Rome. That was his dream. That was something that he knew he needed to do. And when he was about to go to Rome, James came to his door, knocked on his door, and asked for help. And if Paul were to provide that help, he would have to go back to Israel, to Palestine at the time, and not go to Rome in that moment. So if Paul was still the impulsive, the explosive from before, he would have said no and would have gone to Rome. Instead, before answering, so this is what we just talked about, he received something. He received the request from James. Instead of reacting right away, he said, wait. He went into his house, he prayed, and he opened the gospel. He read a little bit. And in the gospel, in the part that he opened, in the prayer that he did, he realized that in that time, the best thing to do was to help James and to go back to Palestine and to work on what James was asking him to do. So then he went back to James and said, yes, I'll go. So you see how he had developed that patience by that time, that serenity by that time. Instead of reacting right away to James, no, he stopped, he reflected, he asked for guidance, and he found the answer that he was looking for. Many years ago, he wouldn't have done so. He would have argued with James, but throughout his life, through his work, he was able to build patience, to build serenity, and was able to act in a different way when he had a second encounter with James. So it was a beautiful passage that Artur brought to us to exemplify how serenity and how patience is something that we build, and it's something that it can be built, because God, especially with patience and serenity, it gives us daily reminders. It gives us daily trials for us to build it. In the next paragraph, Emmanuel says that it is not about prevention against anyone, but about self-government. So what does it mean, prevention against anyone? So this is a reflection that Emmanuel is inviting us to do regards people that tick us off, that people that make us lose it, make us angry. He's telling us that it's not about preventing against anyone. So it's not about isolating ourselves from those who make us angry, but instead it's about self-government. It's about, again, being more self-aware, being more in control of our feelings, of our emotions, so we can self-govern and then be able to learn how to live with everybody. And it requires discipline, it requires effort, and it requires time. And time is a gift that we have to be able to work on these. And if we go to the Spirit's book, question 894, Kardec asks about this. He asks, there are persons who do good through a spontaneous impulse without having to struggle with any contrary sentiment. Do they deserve the same merit as those who have to struggle against their own nature and have managed to overcome it? So again, it's that reflection that some people just seem to be patient, spontaneously patient. And how about those who actually struggle? How about those who actually have to work on it a lot? Well, the answer is that the spirits gave Kardec was those who do not have to struggle have already made progress. They have already worked on it. They struggled and they triumphed in the past. That is why good sentiments cost them no effort and their actions seem so easy. Doing good has become a habit for them. They should be honored as old warriors who have earned their ranks. Since you're still far from perfection, such examples surprise you by their contrast, and you admire them so much because they are rare. However, you must know that on worlds more advanced than yours, what is the exception among you has become the rule. So in worlds more advanced than Earth, than we are right now, those people who are very serene, that are very patient, they're not the exception, they're the rule. And the spirits keep going by saying the sentiment of the good is spontaneous everywhere on those worlds because they are inhabited only by good spirits. And a single bad intention would be a monstrous exception. That is why humans are so happy there. The same will occur on the earth when humanity transforms itself and when it understands and practices charity in its true meaning. So again, the spirits are reminding ourselves of the importance of practice, the importance of that daily work that we're invited to do. And then Emmanuel brings another paragraph saying that for such an achievement, it will be fair for us to line up certain primordial obligations, which appear to us as the foundations of a calm conscience. So what are these primordial obligations? These are like the pillars, these are like the foundations that we have in our lifetime. And on earth here, as incarnated beings, we have a family, we have a body, we have our professional work, we have our charitable work, we're working at church and other ways. And these are our foundations, these are what build us. And and it's interesting to see that when we look at Jesus and see the things that he taught us about how to build these pillars, how to build this base that can give us a calm conscience, Jesus always referred to very small things. Jesus said that his kingdom starts as a mustard seed. Another example, he talked about yeast in baking bread. So he talks about very tiny things, which represent that our duty, our work starts as very small little things. But what's so powerful about the small little things that we do is the discipline, is how constant we do them. If we do them constantly, if we do them daily, for example, they will soon, at one point, become something big. But it's built upon. It's something that starts small. And eventually we'll get to somebody like Paul, somebody like Chico Xavier, for example. They also started really small. Paul, for example, went to the desert for 3 years to start working on himself, starting small. And so this is a good reflection. If we're feeling overwhelmed, when we compare ourselves to Paul, we see Paul's so much more evolved than us. We can reflect the fact that he started small as well. And we, all of us, can start small. And then Emmanuel says that let us understand that we are placed one ahead of the other in order to improve ourselves. So here, Arthur brings an interesting reflection that helped me quite a bit, is whenever we see others as the person that's bringing us a lot of challenges, the person that's bringing us, that is making us angry, that person that just ticks us off, to see them as teachers, to see them as instructors, because they are the ones that are challenging our patience. They are the ones who are challenging our serenity. And it is through that challenge, it is through that trial that we will be able to build our patience, to construct our serenity. So if we can start to see them as teachers, that's one way of seeing them that might help some of us. That can help us build the patience, build the serenity on us. Reminding ourselves that when Emmanuel says that at the end there, he says, in order to improve ourselves, he doesn't say improve me, he says us. It's because in every relationship, the purpose of every relationship is the mutual transformation. Is that both of us will improve, that both of us will learn, that both of us will grow. And if we keep on going, the next paragraph, Emmanuel says, let's embrace the Concord initiatives without expecting for certain people to promote them. So I didn't quite understand this sentence, and Arthur gave us a very, very interesting explanation, a very interesting reflection. He's talking about here when we're in conflict with somebody, when somebody wronged us, when somebody did something wrong to us, or when we did something wrong to somebody, and we're in a dispute, or we're not in good terms. And here Emmanuel is inviting us that we embrace the initiatives, that we take the first step for reconciliation, that we humble our hearts to our pride and take the first step. Be it, doesn't matter if we were the ones that were wrong or it was the other person that was wrong, but us as Christians, as the ones who have the example from Christ, who have learned from Christ, that we're invited to humble our hearts and take the first step. And regardless of the outcome, regardless if we do find reconciliation or not, we only have something to gain from it because we took the first step. Because we are embracing love and embracing reconciliation. So again, it's a great movement to build serenity, to build patience, because this act of taking the first step will work on humbling our hearts. And humbling our hearts helps us with serenity, helps us with patience as well. That's why Emmanuel brought this to this text. And then he keeps on going and says that for the mistakes of others that clearly concern us, let us examine our own with a sincere resolution to correct them. I love this one. We talk a lot about this in our previous talks. And this is that phenomenon that we use of projection. All the criticism, all the judgment, not all, sorry. A lot of the criticism, a lot of the judgment that we do upon others, it's usually because of the projection that we do from us onto others. So the things that we don't like about ourselves, the things that we wish we were doing better, are the things, or are some of the things that we criticize on others, that we judge on others. So that is why Emmanuel is inviting us. Whenever we start judging somebody, whenever we start to criticize something, he's inviting us, let us examine our own with the sincere resolution to correct them. So let us first examine ourselves. Let us first examine us. And within us, we can sincerely work on correcting them, because we are the only ones who have control over us. We have no control over others. We have full control over us. And within us, when we examine, when we fight those pieces that require some work, we can work to correct them. So whenever we're criticizing, whenever we're judging, that's a great indication to let's go within. Let's examine our own, as opposed to focusing on the outside. And chapter 10, Emmanuel tells us that let us not get bored with the work that life entrusts to us, since it is through it that we will achieve a fair promotion on the scale of values in life. So here we can think about something that touched me quite a bit. It was around the work that we do, for example, at a Spiritus Center, charitable work that we do. Whenever we're bored, whenever we think it's too much, the invitation here is to unite ourselves with others that are doing the same type of work. Because when we unite, we can motivate each other, we can help each other, we can support each other, and we can find more meaning in that work if we let ourselves get to boredom. So uniting ourselves through work, through the work in Christ, with Christ, is invaluable to our own charity, to our own work within us, within ourselves. So the reflection that Atu brought us on this was to uniting us through work. And Emmanuel says that it is through that work that we will achieve a fair promotion on the scale of values in our lives. So it is through that work that we will evolve morally, that we will get this promotion, morally speaking, or in the values of our lives. And then chapter 11, we've got 4 more chapters to go. Paragraph 11, when Emmanuel tells us, let us never forget that efficiency does not harmonize with hurry, but it will not be seen without the support of diligence. So here is a great invitation, it's a great reflection around serenity and around patience. Because Emmanuel is telling us that efficiency does not harmonize with hurry. Whenever we think efficiency is something that needs to be done rushed or in hurry, that is not the case. There's a saying in Portuguese that says that the rush, the hurry, is an enemy of the good execution. So whenever we're trying to execute something properly, rushing it, hurrying it, won't make us more efficient, won't make us better. But then he also reminds us that we do need this support of diligence. We do need to be diligent about the work that we're doing, because if we're not diligent, then we go to the other end, to the other opposite of being rushed. We go to the other end where we do nothing, that we wait forever to do something. That's not the path either. He's telling us that with diligence, we can find that sweet spot in the middle where we're not rushing and we're not wasting time. We're working with serenity, we're working with patience and working efficiently, because then everything that we do will be done in a better way, pacifying our work environment, pacifying every work that we do. Then the other one that I really, really liked was that Emmanuel said, it should be remembered that our ears can be turned into fire extinguishers whenever evil seeks us out. I love this passage because it makes us reflect. It invites us to become fire extinguishers of evil. As an example, every time somebody makes every time somebody gossips, for example, or every time somebody comes to us to tell us a criticism or a judgment or something bad about somebody else, let us be the fire extinguishers of that. Let that evil die within us. Let us not take that criticism, take that judgment, and pass it on to others. Let us be the end point of that. Let us not broadcast evil. Instead, let it die with us. And instead, offer a word of peace, offer a word of love. That is also part of serenity and patience, because it might be that we hear something, we hear judgment, we hear criticism from somebody else, and we're anxious, and you say it to somebody else, you take it to somebody else right away. So in building patience, we also allow ourselves to become fire extinguishers of evil, because instead of reacting and going right away and telling somebody else about it, we wait and we let that die with us. We reflect and let that die with us. So that is a great example and a great exercise that we can do to hopefully try to extinguish evil and bring about more words of love, more comments, more commentaries of love to bring harmony instead of chaos, that bring peace and that pacifies everyone around us, as opposed to generating anxiety and generating fear. And these are some of the reflections that Emmanuel is bringing to us. And he goes on to tell us, let us accept the reality that our neighbor does not have our formation, and let us know how to respect each creature in the position in which it finds itself. This one is a great paragraph as well. All of them are good, but this one in particular is really interesting because it tells us, it helps us to allow people to be who they are. Instead of judging them, instead of criticizing them. He's telling us here to accept the reality that our neighbor does not have our formation. Every time we're judging, every time we're criticizing, we're doing it from our point of view, from our formation. But we will never know the formation of somebody else because that is particular to them. A lot of times we might think, well, but I know that person. I've lived with them for so many years. I know that person. Well, have you lived with them throughout all the incarnations that they've had? No. So each one of us have our own individual formation. And because of that, none of us has the right to criticize, the right to judge. But we do have the duty to respect each creature in the position in which they find themselves. And Shiku, there's a quote that is attributed to him when he says that everybody has the right to be who they are, but I have the duty to be better always. So we can't demand others to be better. We have the right to let people be, but I have the duty to make myself better, to improve myself, because after all, that's the only thing I can for sure improve, for sure control. And Avtud actually, he brings us a passage from Shiko and Emmanuel. He says that one time Shiko was feeling quite lonely, quite sad. Shiko was quite sad, and he was feeling quite sad because people didn't like him, and he was letting that criticism get to him. So he was feeling very sad, and then Emmanuel comes to him and says, Shiku, you have to give people the right not to like you. Even Jesus himself couldn't get anybody to like, couldn't get everybody to like him. Who are we to demand that others like us? So these are reflections that we can do. And we will reflect more about this on part 2 of our talk. Because there is a snippet of a reflection that we'll do on the basis that, whenever somebody's doing something that is in detriment of a lot of other people, then it grants us to bring up reflections, to point the mistakes, to point the errors, and to point how we can improve. Right. So in that sense, there is room for us to speak up and for us to reflect how we can, as a whole, improve, right? When people's actions are in detriment of so many others. And that's the Gospel according to Spiritism, I believe, chapter 21. But in our part 2, we'll discuss a little bit more about this in more depth. And then the last paragraph is when Emmanuel tells us that, in short, so to sum up, serenity is not a spiritual acquisition that is made with the touch of magic, but through the often hard and rough work of patience in action. So again, serenity is not a spiritual acquisition. It's not, I'm going to pray today and tomorrow I'm going to become a serene person. But when I pray today, I will likely feel some peace. I will likely feel some serenity. But tomorrow, they might have gone away. So again, it's another invitation for us to pray again and to pray again and to pray again, and so on and so forth, because it is not with a touch of magic, but it is with effort. It is with utilizing the rough and the hard work that we go through in our lifetimes, all the challenges, all the trials, and all the expiations that we go through. Those, most of them, will have a piece of patience that we're being invited to work on. So let us be able to humble our hearts, to serene our hearts, and to bring some patience within our hearts so we can better go through the trials, so we can suffer less, and so we can evolve and get a little bit closer to what Jesus told us when he invited us to come to him, when he told us that his yoke is easy and his burden is light, when he told us that in his meek heart, in humble heart, our souls can find peace. Our souls can find rest. So hopefully the reflections that were brought today can help us build some peace in us, helps us develop a little bit of our serenity, a little bit of our patience. And we will be bringing more about this book, about calm. And next time we'll talk about peace in us. And then the next one, we'll talk about how we can transform our anger. So there are very important teachings on this book called Calm from Francisco Cândido Xavier, and I invite you all to give it a read. It's available online for free, and it's very short. There's roughly 33 paragraphs, and each paragraph is a page, so a page or two. So it's fairly straightforward. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd like to thank you for participating and for being here on this Sunday. It's our first Sunday of 2022. So hopefully we can start off on building peace in 2022 within our hearts and hopefully towards everybody around us. So thank you everybody for being here today. And since there are no more comments, thank you, Sonia. Thank you, MR. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Anna, for being here today and participating. And we'll end in a quick prayer. Let us close our eyes and let us Jesus be here with us, and let us feel some serenity in our hearts. Let us feel some peace within our hearts, where we ask Jesus to give us the strength, to give us the patience to build, to keep on building and maintaining this peace within our hearts, reminding us of prayer, reminding us of vigilance, reminding us of reflection, of study, reminding us of love. After all, Jesus himself told us to love one another as he has loved us so deeply, so profoundly. May we feel your love in our hearts, Jesus, forever and ever. So be it. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a great Sunday, and we'll see you tomorrow, Monday at 7 p.m. for another talk in Portuguese. Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.